Hello, my name is Maddie Duval, Kendra Nielsen's COO, and welcome to episode 169, Unmasking Unhealthy Habits, A Parent's Guide to Positive Change with Michele Riechman. Today you'll be listening to an episode on Healthy Beyond 40, where Kendra and Michele share some eye-opening tips on how to actually take care of ourselves while still being there for our families. They talk about everything from identifying their unmet needs to setting boundaries. So if this sounds like you, stay tuned.
All right, I'm so excited to have Kendra on the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health and our unmet needs as women and how to fulfill those and how we can think about our health holistically. So Kendra, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Ooh, all right. Let's see. So I am the founder and CEO and host of Fulfillment Therapy. I have my own podcast. I've loved doing that so much more than I anticipated. I'm also a therapist, and my husband is as well. So we've been loving that for the most part. And a while back, I actually did personal training. I still am a personal trainer, but I mostly focus on mental health and wellness now. So that's like in a nutshell. Oh, and I'm also a mother of 4. Michele and I were talking about this earlier. My oldest is also 17. My youngest is 8. And we often rotate exchange students. So I kind of feel like I'm a mom of 5 because there's often 5 people here. So yeah, it's just a blast, very busy and fun. And my kids are in those really fun stages where you get to see them learning what their interests are and diving into those and seeing them get better and better. So I love this stage of life. Like I have so much more energy than I did as a young mom, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. More energy even as you're aging. So I'm excited to hear your outlook and take on these different topics. So first, let's dive into how do you identify unmet needs? So when there's something that we need, but we're not even aware of it. And maybe some of my listeners don't even quite know what that means. So you might want to explain that first.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first came across this when I was going to school again for the second time, getting my master's in clinical counseling. And when I looked at like or a lot of people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but this like really resonated with me because if you haven't seen it, it's a pyramid and it breaks it down into different areas where we have like at the bottom is our basic needs and then our psychological needs. And then at the top is those self-fulfillment needs, which is where I love to focus on. But at the bottom, you might have that population of clients that they're always putting out fires, like they're just barely surviving and they just don't know what's wrong, but they are dealing with things that are more like, where am I going to sleep at night? Are we able to pay for rent? Do I have enough food? Like their basic needs are not being met. And in that middle area, you have those other needs like self-esteem or that feeling of accomplishment, or relationships might be struggling here, those love needs. And so you learn to understand those a little bit more. And we can go in really into a lot of depth with each of those areas, but just understanding somewhat where they are. And at the very top of the pyramid is those, like I said, those fulfillment needs where we reach our higher potential and we are more creative. We're doing things that help us become who we want to become, who we feel like we're meant to become. And when we're just staying in that bottom area of those basic needs, it's really hard to feel true joy and fulfillment because, like I said, we're just putting out fires instead of thriving like we really want. So the trick in this, identifying those needs, is some psychoeducation, some help, some coaching, therapy even, because this can be complicated, but also doesn't have to be. Like you can just, like a quick self-check would be like, are my basic needs met? Do I have security and food and water and shelter? Probably. Most of us do. Then the next area, like, how are my relationships? How am I connecting with my friends? What am I doing in the areas of like feeling accomplished, like maybe at work or otherwise? And then if you feel like, okay, maybe that's not it, like I feel pretty good in those areas, maybe you just are not leaning in and doing something more for you. Like maybe it's been for so many other people that you haven't really explored, like, what do I love to do? What talents and hobbies have I had? Have I been not utilizing? Have I been developing those things, or have I just like kind of existed for everyone else and have put those off on the back burner? I know a lot of moms do that, especially like when I ask them, what do you love to do? What are your talents? What are your hobbies? I just get this blank stare. And I'm like, oh, I remember that. Just not focusing on that for so long that you forget who you are. So that's kind of a loaded question, but that's a very simple kind of quick way to do a self-check of like, what am I missing here? And where am I at in this pyramid? And what do I want next?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to just go on autopilot and we keep doing what we're doing. And a lot of times we keep saying yes to other people and other things, kids, family, things that can be good. But definitely, I hear that word back burner quite a bit. I put myself on the back burner. I also work with women who are like retiring and they think they're going to have this time, but somehow they still manage to fill their time because it's been such a habit of not taking care of themselves. So I think people always have to prioritize that. Even when you're younger and busier, you can still prioritize you and being able to sort of step back, like you were saying, and look at those different areas. It also reminded me of like the wheel of life. Every few months, I look at one for myself and thinking of those different areas, like how am I doing in each area? You know, relationships, parenting, spirituality, my physical body, my nutrition, these different pieces. How am I doing in those? And what do I want to focus on? So I think that's a great explanation. And so let's say someone is really struggling in that like self-fulfillment, really sort of also just taking care of themselves. What are some things that they could do to start to meet some of those unmet needs that they have?
Well, you kind of hit on it a little bit already, even with that balance. Like I call it a wellness wheel, kind of breaking that down. But as you probably have guessed, I'm a big advocate of therapy. So start with a therapist or a coach or whoever you can. But breaking those down. So part of that is healing from past wounds. And that's a huge part because otherwise we are just putting Band-Aids on things. So healing from those trials, those battles, those traumas that you've experienced, that is really foundational to it. But it's also other things like learning how to be assertive. And so many people think they know what assertiveness is, but I promise you 95% of my clients do not, or they think they're being more assertive than they are, but instead they're often very passive or too aggressive. And we break that down, like how can you set boundaries, and then how can you maintain them? How can you defend those boundaries? Or even understanding like what their values are. Like all of these are key parts in it. But boundaries is a huge thing. Assertiveness is a huge thing that plays a part in that. Yeah, and that even that balance that we talked about. I would say those are 3 areas that I really focus on with a lot of clients that kind of help them really get that headway for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a big thing. Even as I work with people, we have these past patterns or wounds or hurts or things that we did as a child that we carry into that are bad patterns, like emotional eating, whether that's like we did something good and we eat as a reward, or we're stuck in anxiety or sadness, or maybe there's fighting around us and I go to my room and I eat and we're stuck in these patterns. Are there any other, because I think sometimes a lot of people aren't even aware of those and how they're really affecting their health. So I gave some, I don't know, are there any more that you can think of just so if someone's listening, it will trigger like, oh, maybe that's me.
Yeah, that is a great question. What I see with a lot of clients is, and this one is socially acceptable usually, it's media consumption. So not just your phone, but then you're going to the laptop, then you're going to the TV, then whatever it is, like you're just rotating where nobody's connecting and you're just doing that over and over again. But it can also be, and you've probably seen this in your field too, it can be exercise. It can be being too preoccupied with our diet. It can be so anything that is where we go. Like here's a self-check, just plain and simply. If you're feeling hungry, lonely, tired, any of those emotions that are kind of make you feel restless and uncomfortable, what do you want to do when you feel that way? Like I hear a lot of women say like, oh, I just want to eat ice cream, or I want to binge watch something on TV. Like that's because we don't want to feel our feelings. We don't want to face them a lot of times. So whatever that thing is that we do, binge eating, it's their phone, it's exercise. Like, you know what I mean? It's different for every person, but it is something to escape from something that activates us, that triggers us and makes us want to escape from that thing that's painful.
Yeah, I love that. In my personal training app that I use with my clients, I have a little group chat, and I usually send some type of video each week to everybody as a group, and everybody can share. The uncomfortable feelings was one of the ones we did, and people had to share what uncomfortable feeling they have and can they sit with that? What would that look like instead of reaching for food or doing something else? And I think that is huge. So look out for that, guys. When are you having an uncomfortable feeling or sensation that you want to escape? And can you sit with that? How can you sit with it? Because I'm sure that you can. And using that word escape, am I trying to escape something? Maybe a conversation with someone, maybe my own children or whatever it is. What am I trying to escape? And use that as a cue that there's something there that needs some work on. Okay, so I love that. So also tell me a little bit. So I find so many women are sort of at their max. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they have no time, their plate is full, they're trying to balance all these things. And how do they still find that greater fulfillment when they're at their max?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, it's compassion, self-compassion, acceptance for the stage that you're in. Like, I didn't have a lot for myself, I feel like, when I went through that stage. And yet, as I have my clients come in over and over again, I'm like, oh, this too shall pass. Like, this is just a stage. You're going to get through it. But just having that self-love, and I know that's easier said than done, but it is very much just learning to let go and control what you can control and allowing the rest to let go. Like, I did a pretty good job of exercising throughout all of my pregnancies and all of those things. And I know some women are not able to do that for one reason or another. But there were times when I had like a baby in the NICU, or I was healing from a C-section or something where it wasn't realistic to do those things. And that's okay. Just giving yourself permission to not be perfect. Let down some of your unrealistic expectations. And then the other side of that, like, there's a balance in all things, right? The other side of that is very much not, I tell my clients this all the time. If it's important to you, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. And I know a lot of you have heard that, but I think that all the time when clients are coming in over and over with these same problems. And like, if it is important to you, you will stop justifying these things and you will find a way. So if fulfillment is important to you, then you will get reflective, you'll get still, you'll ponder, you'll do what you can to examine your life, to get a coach, to get therapy, to get to that next level, because the pain of staying where you're at is too great and you're ready to move up. You're ready to thrive. And that could be a small incremental step. I love James Clear and BJ Fogg that talk a lot about there's that incremental growth, that 1%, those micro adjustments that we can make. Like, if you're comparing yourself to your neighbor or somebody else, you might feel like you are so far back and there's no way you're going to catch up. But that only brings shame and sadness when we compare it to others, but just that small thing that we can do for ourselves. So maybe for me today, that might be, I'm going to be present with my kids for 10 minutes when they get home. I'm going to put away all distractions and I'm just going to look them in the eye, and I'm going to do that this whole week. And that's going to be like my win. That's going to be my tiny thing because I'm struggling in that area and I want to focus on that. Or maybe it's something bigger, like, you know what? I've been consuming a lot of media. I'm ready to become a creator. I'm going to sign up for a class or whatever that is. Like, we can all break it down a little bit, but focusing on maybe what you're lacking and what would help you become your higher self, your better self, or you're reaching your greater potential without excuse, without justification, but leaning into that and being brave.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how really starting from that place of self-compassion, acceptance, self-love, because if we're not there, that's something we need to work on. Because once we can get there or closer to there, then we can start to take actions that actually help support ourselves and our health. when we are against ourselves and beating ourselves up, we're not going to be taking those actions that we need to do. So that can be a cue as maybe that's an area that I need to get some coaching or therapy or something on. And I also loved how you said the control. I mean, this always comes up for me too. Like, what can I control? I like imagining 2 circles. What can I control? What is out of my control? And I can focus on those things that I can control. And a lot of those are going to be you because we can't control other people. So I can control how I move in my body, when I'm going to bed. If I have Facebook or Instagram on my phone, I just took it off of my phone recently. But we can control a lot of those things. And that's what we need to focus on. And I think the other thing as you were talking that I thought of was just sometimes we don't know the possibility of what is possible for us. And so that can keep us stuck too. So we really have to get quiet, open our mind, maybe talking to a good friend or a coach or a therapist. And how can I open my mind to more possibilities that I don't have to stay where I am? I may have these different things that I'm doing, but there may be other possibilities too. And we have to open our mind to that. Did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, just writing some notes on that. I love that. Like we don't know it's possible. We don't know what we don't know. But it is that taking that one step forward into the darkness, because that's all it takes is forward momentum. And what I have found with my clients and even with myself is it's so easy to get discouraged and down on ourselves because we're not seeing the big picture on how far we've come since, like, say, since we started having children or since leaving college or leaving home, whatever it is. If we were to really track the growth that we've had, in our minds, we think, oh, we've gotten so much worse at this and this and this. But really, probably most of us have improved significantly more than we expected. And so tracking that, breaking that down and celebrating your wins. I know everybody says that, but it's really hard to celebrate when all you do is beat yourself up constantly. I wouldn't want to do things either if I was talked to that way. So,
yeah. And a lot of times, our improvement is small and gradual, and we don't see that. Something I ask my clients every week is what went well? What are your wins? Because we need to start seeing that, because that's what helps to create more and more action. A lot of times our brain, or we have come up with an unrealistic expectation when it comes to our health with something. And when we don't get there, we feel like we're failing, but we actually don't see that we are slowly improving. And when we do more of that gradual improvement, a lot of times that is what is more sustainable, and that is what feeds our brain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so another question here. So what are some tips that you have for women to really thrive, really take care of themselves, instead of just being complacent and sort of going through the motions, doing the same thing that they're doing, sort of getting out of that rut? How does someone do that? Like when they want to take care of their health, they have these different ideas, but they're really sort of stuck.
Well, if I would answer that with a personal story, actually, my husband and I, and as I mentioned before, we are both therapists. And so we are very much in the world of what can we do to improve our lives. And even with us and that background, there was a time when we were just like kind of stuck and felt like we were just surviving as parents. And I remember he finally got to the point, this is when we were very much strapped financially because one of us was going to school for so long, like just leapfrogging and a lot of debt and all of these things. And he eventually said, you know what, I am going to sign up for a course, some sort of accountability every week. And I'm going to sign up for a year. And he said something like that. It's like, we cannot afford that. We can't justify that expense. And it was incredible. Like that is the most motivated I have ever seen him. And he was just like on fire. He was doing things without needing any sort of prompting or nagging from me. And I was in awe. And that was the first time I think that we decided to, well, he decided to invest in himself. And I realized like that was a game changer. And he was an example to me in that situation of how important it is to invest in ourselves. But sometimes we do small investments, like maybe we have good insurance, and so it's not that big of an investment to do therapy. Or maybe we have a really inexpensive gym or something like that. Like they're easy things, easy enough that it will help us and we'll keep improving. But there is something like once you're willing to invest in yourself, once you're willing to be, well, going back to assertiveness or advocate for yourself and say, you know what, I matter too, not just the people around me, not just my family members, and not in this like self-indulgent kind of selfish way that can be negative, but this like, I matter, my mental health matters when I am standing on that higher ground, when I am doing more to improve my personal life, it benefits those around me, my loved ones. So I'm going to invest in myself in whatever way I can that feels right to me. And because I'm a therapist, I would say therapy, or I would say any courses in those different areas you're struggling with the most. But first and foremost, heal the wounds and then invest in yourself in whichever way you feel like would be the next best step. And then keep taking that step forward, that step into the darkness that leads you to become your higher self, your better self. And that's where happiness lies. That's where peace lies. That's where fulfillment lies. And it just takes one step.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story about your husband. And I think there is something even with clients that start to work with me and when they start to invest a little bit of money because they want that accountability, they have that desire. It's like just like your husband had that desire. I really want to improve this area. And that can start to make the difference when you have someone else on your team, someone else helping see those things that you're not seeing so that you can get moving forward. And I love how you said advocate for myself, that I matter too. So if someone needs to hear that today, repeat that in your mind. I matter too. And it's not about being selfish, but I tell people all the time, no one else is really going to take care of you. Like you have to do that. Even though I have a great husband and he will do things for me sometimes, it's really up to me to take care of me. He's not going to tell me to like eat a salad instead of a hamburger and french fries or to go work out when I don't feel like it. It has to come from me that I matter and I have to be making that a priority by still doing the other things in my life. Kendra, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Feel free to share where people can find you or if you have any last tidbit.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, fulfillment.therapy.org is my website, on all the podcast platforms. Fulfillment Therapy is my podcast. And yeah, I'm sure you'll probably have it in your show notes. You can find me in all those places as well. But it's been a pleasure to be on the show. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, yep. And those links will be in the description. All right, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode tomorrow. And remember that you matter and take that next step forward in your health.
Thank you for listening. As a reminder, head to our show notes to find our links to find us in all the places, as well as checking out our new blog. If you're interested in being an intern, look into it on fulfillment.therapy.org. And as a last reminder, please go to our website to check out our countdown for our new courses coming January 2025. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.